Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word. Today is part 2 in our series on Bitcoin. So some of the things we talk about, obviously, which one of the things we're going to talk about later today as we, finish part 2 of our series, then we're going to have another part the following week, and then we'll be done with Bitcoin, at least for now. And like we had mentioned on the last podcast, and I put this in the show notes of the episode that's dropping today, that, the Acquired podcast is a good podcast that did an episode on Bitcoin, a deep dive of 3 hours. And they covered the technology side as well as other sides. And that's not something that we're all going to get too heavy in here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the exchanges. And so we've talked a lot on this podcast about what exchanges do. So the NASDAQ is an exchange for predominantly tech companies. The New York Stock Exchange is the New York Stock Exchange. And basically it's just the intermediary between where people buy and sell things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about GameStop towards the end of this, and different ways that something happened similar to this happened with them. So we'll just get right into it because it's a lot to cover, and I really don't want this to be a super long thing for you or me. I've had a really long day, and everybody else on the pod. Well, first of all, we can't even see Zoe, so I think she's she's doing it on purpose. Our connection, just to kind of let you guys know, our connections are all fucked up today. Like the episode last month, I don't even fucking know what's going on. What technically, I guess it was last month, had popping noises throughout the whole thing. I had to use different audio. Poor Zoe, her computer is like not letting her get on, and you're muted, Zoe. I don't know if you know that or not.
My cat was on my lap. I didn't think you'd want her purring throughout it, so I muted myself for a minute, but she's jumped off now. So.
Oh, it might be nice and soothing. So we're just looking at a black box that says Zoe Terry. And
I may be here, I may not be here. It's up to you to decide.
I know, that's the thing. That's what I'm telling you. Is like, she's probably just like, fuck both you bastards. I'm fucking tired. and I'm sure she's in full makeup and her hair is completely done right now. But she's having technical issues. Right.
So I know the truth. Yesterday was her birthday, and her ass was out partying. So she's like, I'm not going to show up on video today. She's been slurring when she's been speaking.
That's, you know me so well.
She does slur a lot anyway. And I've actually started noticing that I'm slurring for no reason. And I don't know if it's because my birthday is in short order after Zoe's, and then Marianne's is on the same day next month. So happy early birthday to my bestie, Marianne. And then I'll be following much shortly after that on also the same day. So we're just peas in a pod with the 3rd as our birthday. So let's get into this. If Zoe doesn't fall asleep and she wants to jump in, then she can just jump in and talk over me since we can't see her. She's probably flipping us both off now and being obscene, which I'm hoping silently in my little heart that that's what she's doing. So when we're talking about the Bitcoin network, no one owns the Bitcoin network. And it's even though the developers are improving the software that is used to basically trade Bitcoin, exchange Bitcoin between buyers and sellers. They have to all be compatible with each other. So there's certain different protocols that they have to have, but all of the users are free to use their own software. And so we have a couple different exchanges. Now, we're going to talk about two actually one more than the other, but two kind of nightmare exchange situations. And one of the resources that I put in the show notes here is that you'll see that there was an article that I came across that had the 9 best exchanges for Bitcoin. And of course, since the time of the two exchanges we're going to talk about, since the time that they came out, they have gotten a little bit better and a little bit more sophisticated. But we're going to talk a little bit about still some of the thefts that are happening. And so what I get asked about constantly, constantly,
Do you get
constantly,
how often?
constantly is Bitcoin. And then it moves from Bitcoin to cryptocurrency. And then it's like insert whatever currency at that point after that. And so when we're talking about exchanges, they have a couple. One, we mentioned one on the episode last time, Coinbase, who is doing a direct to market and bypassing the standard IPOs in order to do a raise of capital. And the other one is there's another one called Coin Mama, and then eToro, and there's a whole variety of different ones. And so depending on what it is you're trying to do, these exchanges can help you. So for instance, Coinbase has high limits if you're buying from a bank account. Coin Mama has higher limits that you're allowed to buy if you're buying with a credit card. The thing that's important to know about this when you're buying Bitcoin is that if you're buying it on a credit card, you're buying it as a cash advance. And, you know, we've talked about in our credit episode, which was like a year and a half ago, we've talked about the fact that credit cards compound daily and they're double digit interest anytime they're cash advances, and they're typically the high 20s, low 30s. And so if you just have to really think about what you're doing if you're pulling money off your credit card to go into Bitcoin as a cash advance, because then you're going to be taking the volatility, potential volatility of Bitcoin, as well as paying out the ass for cash advance fees. So that's just something to keep in mind. I wanted to caveat that. And basically eToro allows you to start trading really, really fast. The thing that I thought was very interesting about a lot of the exchanges, which makes sense, but at the same time, so the whole point of doing the decentralized currency and doing it peer to peer, where if I want to send money to Stormy, I do it and then he gets it right away, just like as if I had handed him $100, and then if he wants to take $100 and give it to Zoe, then he can do that, and there's no transaction fees, and that's decentralization. And they were trying to get away from the banks as intermediaries and charging fees. But in the exchanges, in order to actually buy the Bitcoin, there are fees that are associated with that. And depending on how the exchange is structured and how their fee structure is, it could be the same amount to buy 1 Bitcoin versus 100,000 Bitcoins, or it could be different on a sliding scale. And it just kind of cracked me up, because the whole spirit of it was, yeah, you know, fuck the centralized currency, and we're gonna do this ourselves and not, you know, save money on fees and all this stuff. And then there's fees to get in or out of it when you're transacting the business. And I just thought that was kind of funny. And do you think that's funny, Story?
I think it's super funny.
Super funny. So when I'm reading my notes, I can't see these guys. Well, I can't see Zoe anyway, but I can't see these guys. So when I hear like laughing behind my notes, I get really nervous, because both of these fuckers have done different things while I've been trying to read and be serious, like acting like jackasses. But I don't know, the mood of the podcast seems to be solemn, like everybody is, I think, dragging ass right now. I think we're all just working our butts off. And so, you know what, maybe we won't do it. But this is one thing I thought was really interesting, is that they have Bitcoin ATMs. Were you aware of that, Stormy?
I am. There's a few places I've been to. They've got Bitcoin ATMs.
And there's
I know a guy who's behind the Bitcoin ATMs. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he's owned a tea shop here in Vegas, and he had hundreds of Bitcoin ATMs that he was out working and making negotiations to put them inside of places.
Yeah, there is. I've included a link in the resources, and there is 6 Bitcoin ATMs located in the Las Vegas area. And I had absolutely no idea. And so you didn't know about that either, right, Zoe?
Now, what do you get out of them, seeing as there's no currency to get out of them? What's the point of them?
Well, and so I didn't dive too deep into this, but I'm just going to take a wild assumption and assume that they're converting it into dollars. So a lot of times, like
Uh,
when you go to a foreign country and you withdraw money, it converts it for you. The thing that's so interesting is if you have one Bitcoin being 35,000 something dollars, which it's currently around right now, that means you're taking out fractions of Bitcoins because the ATM is not going to be able to pump out $35,000 to you. And then, of course, I wondered when are they what market are they marking that to? Are they marking it to the prior day's close? Are they marking it to market immediately? Which, of course, I don't know how they would do that because then you'd have to have a fucking real ass computer in the ATM. And I honestly,
They're large enough to have computers. I bet you it's a real computer tied to real live transactions.
hmm.
That wouldn't be that. That doesn't seem like it'd be that difficult. But yeah, but most Bitcoin transactions are done in fractions. There's
Yeah,
very
I
few
mean, it would have to
transactions
be.
done in whole Bitcoins.
hmm And yeah, so the Bitcoin. So I had to look. I was like, do we have any in Las Vegas? But of course, it would make sense because we're a big tourist city. Well, we were when we were open. We were a big tourist city, so the fact that we have Bitcoin ATMs, it's not really that shocking. But it was surprising to me because since it's not something that I run in those circles, it was off my radar. So, we're going to talk real quickly about just two of the exchanges that have had really sorted past Mount Gox and the Silk Road. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some other theft that has been going on in the cryptocurrency circle. And then we're going to talk about some other things that are happening and we'll kind of tie them all in together. So, for, for those of you who are you saying something, Stormy, or?
I'm just laughing because we're going to get to talk about Mount Gox and Silk Road. Those are going to be, I mean, just awesome topics to talk about today.
I thought you were making a joke like Mount Gox and Mount Cox. I swear I thought that's where you were going with it. I like my joke better. I think my joke
Yeah,
is much faster, much funnier. Okay, so let's get into Mount Gox
Mount
real quick.
Gox.
Yeah, so it was launched in July of 2010 in Tokyo, Japan, and by 2013 and 2014, it was handling over 70% of all Bitcoin transactions, and that's going to come back up in a minute. And the other podcast also goes through this, but they don't go through it as far as the timeline as much in detail. And so I really wanted to look at the actual birth and the movement through the exchanges and how the Bitcoin process has changed. So it was started by Jeb McCaleb. And of course, as everybody probably knows at this point, he was a Magic the Gathering nerd and he wanted to build an exchange, which again, an exchange is just a place where you buy and sell things. And he wanted to build an exchange for people to trade, buy, sell their Magic cards. He ended up not liking that. And so what he ended up doing was he decided that he was going to use that as a Bitcoin exchange. And he did that for a little bit. And then he sold it over to a gentleman by the name of Mark Carpelius. I don't know if I'm saying that right, who was living in Japan. And this is March of 2011. And
And I
so
think Mark kind of settled him a bill of goods, didn't he? Because he said, I'm going to take this to a whole nother level for you. I got you.
Oh yeah. So Jeb basically said something to the extent of, hey, he did it for a couple months and then he stepped out and he was like, you know what, I'm going to turn it over to this guy because this guy is going to be what's going to take this big time. And then he went on to, he fucked off over there and he did whatever else he was going to do. And so now the timeline begins so we can kind of start processing through this. So let me get back over here to my notes. So on June 13th of 2011, the exchange reported about 25,000 Bitcoin, which was about $400,000 in United States dollars at the time, was robbed from 478 accounts. And the robbing from the Mount Gox accounts continued, and they were continued to be reporting. And on June 19th of 2011, there was a stream of fraudulent trades that caused the price of Bitcoin to drop to 1 cent on the Mount Gox exchange after a hacker jumped in and basically used credentials of an auditor, and he used that as a way to transfer a large number of Bitcoins illegally to himself. So I'm like, I don't even understand how hacking. I mean, that's it is so out of my league how people can come in and hack and fake credentials or trick the software. But we're going to talk here a little bit about some of the other things that has happened with the dark web. So, accounts with the equivalent of more than about $8,750,000 were affected, and Mt. Gox wanted to try to prove that they had control over what they were doing, and they moved. And this is going to come back later in what we're talking about. They moved 424,242 bitcoins, what they called from cold storage, but basically they just kind of pulled them out from some hard drive or some wallet that they had somewhere to try to help try to stabilize the exchange. In October 2011, they continued to have problems, and about 24 transactions just appeared magically in the blockchain. And there was a total of 2,609 Bitcoin that was sent to invalid addresses. And because there was no private key, then the Bitcoins were effectively lost. So there's the private key and the public key. Obviously, you have your private key, then there's a public key, and then you need both of those to unlock the Bitcoin. And somehow in October of 2011, with all of the bullshit going on with the exchange at that time, under this Mark guy, they had lost 2,609. So as we're going through this, and we talked about in the last episode about it being a finite currency, meaning that as it stands now, the only way you can create it is to mine it. And Zoe shared the story of us with the guy from the UK that had how much Bitcoin did he have on that hard drive again, Zoe?
200 and something £1,000 worth, which was about 225,000.
No, he had millions. Worth. No, because he was going to give the town 35 million.
Oh, 225 million.
It was a big number. I think it may have been 700 million.
It was 200. Yeah, I thought I think it was basically like 200. As far as pounds wise, it was 275 million. I think is what it was.
That's right. Yeah, because you're right. He was going to give 5 million to his local council. So yeah, it was 200 million pounds and $225 million. That's right.
It was a big number. We think that's the number.
Yeah,
something like that.
A huge number. So when we're talking about, like I said, with the fact that they just kind of pulled these 424,000 Bitcoins out of God knows where, their ass or whatever, when we're talking about it being a finite currency and we're seeing that things are getting stolen, we're seeing that things are getting misplaced, or some of them are going up in smoke and hard drives that are in landfills over in the UK, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. So just out of somewhere, they pull 424,000 Bitcoins out of their ass. And then, like I said, so October, we see more transactions, 24 transactions just pop up, and 2,609 Bitcoin just go poof. They're sent to wrong addresses, and that's it. Everybody's asked out. We talked about in the last podcast episode about how part of being decentralized pro is that it's not, it doesn't have a governing body. And then part of the cons of having Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is that it doesn't have a governing body. So when shit like this happens, you're kind of out on your ass.
Is that because it doesn't have a governing body?
Because it doesn't have a governing body. That is correct. That's fucking amazing, Stormy.
I'm good.
Dude, you're like fucking like psychic. Like you fucking know where I'm going, dude.
No, I think it's the top-notch research he did beforehand.
Oh, exactly. See, he tries to play low key, but really he does other stuff.
Absolutely.
So then what we had is I thought this was very interesting because it's something we're going to talk about in a minute. In February 22nd of 2013, we had some new anti-money laundering requirements that came through by Dawala. And Dawala is the only United States e-commerce company. And basically they came down with some anti-money laundering protocols, and they temporarily restricted transactions from Mt. Gox, and a lot of them were canceled, but the funds never made it back into the Mt. Gox accounts. So the transactions were in the process of being sent somewhere. Dawala came in and said, nope, fuck that, you're not doing it. And they terminated them, but there was never a return to sender. So those Bitcoins, and I don't have an amount on it, but those Bitcoins were also lost to the ages. And so I don't know if they're going to be on some computer somewhere that they can get those back out. And it's also very, very confusing to me, where if the miners are creating Bitcoin by mining transactions, but this is multiple times now, and I'm not even halfway through the research, that they have had Bitcoin go missing because transactions were sent to the wrong people or because transactions were never completed. And we're going to talk about that here in another second. And another time this happened, I don't understand how the miners can continue to certify transactions if the transactions are a broken chain.
I don't get that. What do you mean? Why would it be a broken chain?
Because like in the instance with what I just said here with Dawala, they went ahead and they restricted accounts, and there was Bitcoins that were moving between buyers and sellers, or between, two people for services or sales of goods. And what happened is that they put a hiatus on all of those, but the Bitcoins that had left the accounts never came back to those accounts. So if you're looking at a register, okay, let's just look at a check register. For millennials, we used to have to carry around a checkbook, looks like the size of a fucking brick, and you had to write all this bullshit, and you'd always have some lady in front of you at the fucking grocery store that wrote out the check, but then she needed to balance her checkbook right there when all of us are behind us, like, go fucking A, And so the thing is that even if you're just looking at a checkbook register, if you write a check for, $250 and you send it to your grandkid, and your grandkid loses the check, then you have a discrepancy of $250. But if you're talking about a blockchain, that every single, that's just a register for one person you fix. But if you're talking about a blockchain, that every single transaction is based on the transaction prior to it, but the research is showing that there's transactions that are being broken, then I don't understand how people are mining the blockchain to make sure that the transactions are complete. Do you see what I'm saying now?
Yeah, maybe the broken one, maybe there's some sort of maybe it's still there, but because if they're all, and maybe it just like it sits there, because even though it's broken, it still has, let's say, whatever, and I'm just speculating here, but let's say if it's, whatever that string of numbers are, it's still there, just no one can get into it because they don't have the key. So it's still there, even though if it's lost, that number's still there, but no one has the key, which is why no one has access to it.
So you're saying that it's still part of the overall register, so it still balances, yet
Correct.
the actual Bitcoin is lost to the ages.
Correct, because remember, if you don't have the key, you can't get it. So
Right.
It's still there, but no one has the key, and you just can't. Maybe one day when we get like these super quantum computers, can you imagine if you're the person who invents a quantum computer that can figure out how to break the key? You've got billions of dollars.
Oh yeah, easily. And I'm sure there is tons of people that are out there actively working on that for sure. And so we're going to keep seeing this reoccurrence of transactions kind of going awry. And on August 5th of 2013, Mt. Gox announced that it incurred significant losses due to crediting deposits, which had not fully cleared. And so the reason why this is a very timely subject is because GameStop now, I looked at it earlier today. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing this back up is because the last time on the first part of our series, we talked about it was at like 195 something. And so today it closed at $53.50. I think I also erroneously said on the last podcast, the first part of this series, that it had hit $500 at some point, and that was incorrect. It had topped out at about $483. And there's this big hubbub and class action lawsuit going against Robinhood now, because they're saying that Citadel stepped in and basically had them halt all of the buys of GameStop and AMC on their platform. And what basically Robinhood is saying, so what happens is if I have a client who wants money out of their account, and they, put the order in on a Friday, and so that order, depending on what it is going to execute either the minute I do it or by end of business day on that Friday. But then there's going to be a weekend where the market's not open, which means the trade is not going to settle. And then it's going to be 2 days. So it's trade plus 2 days, T plus 2. And so then that would be Monday, Tuesday would be when it would settle. And then Wednesday would be when I would be able to transfer the money out to their checking account. And so I always tell clients, if you're going on vacation, or you're going to buy something, let me know a month in advance, because we want to see where the market's sitting at. And then we can kind of have a little bit of control over when we should, get out of this. Well, if you're buying and selling a transaction immediately, if you're buying MGM and you're buying AMC, that transaction technically hasn't settled. It's kind of like it used to be back in the day when you wrote a check, there was float. You'd write a check and you'd give it to the grocery store, and then it would take 2 or 3 days to hit your account. And so that's the settlement period. And what was happening is that GameStop came in and Robinhood came in and they said, oh, no. The reason why that happened is because we had so many people that were buying securities they had to go into GameStop, that the clearinghouse that we sell all of our trades through. And so the clearinghouses are the market makers. So back in the day, when Wall Street was Wall Street, and you saw it in the 80s where everybody's running around screaming at each other and there's papers throwing all over the place. What would happen is that, let's say I'm with MGM or I'm with a brokerage firm. I run up to the market maker and I go, I want to buy, I don't know, 100,000 shares of XYZ. And then the market maker turns to somebody else over here who wants to sell 100,000 shares of XYZ. And then what happens is that person makes a market for it and it negotiates the sale between the two, and that's where you get the bid and the ask price. And so now that everything's computerized, your bid and your ask price, like if I'm buying a stock right now and I put it in as a market order, it's going to be between the bid and the ask. It's going to be the spread. So it's going to be somewhere between the spread depending on how it's filled at the time. And everything, every market order, it goes in order. So it's like market, so depending on when the market order gets in there is going to depend the actual price. But at least you can go, okay, was the last price and this is what the spread is between the bid and the ask. And so what happens is that Robinhood doesn't have the ability to do that themselves. And so they sell their transactions to a market maker and the market maker pays them a fee. And this is how they've always done business, but they did not disclose this information. And so they got hit with $65 million from the SEC, I believe November of last year, for not disclosing it on their website. They disclosed part of where their fees came through, but they didn't disclose this market maker thing. And so now with the GameStop being frozen on the platform, what they basically said is Robinhood said, well, we had to do it because our clearinghouse said that there was too much volatility. There was too many people trading on margin. And so we had to shut the whole thing down. And so that's the exact same reason that Mt. Gox was saying in this situation where they were doing the exchanging between the different Bitcoins, but they did not have everything completely cleared. And so it started putting them into a cash crunch. So I just wanted to kind of parallel those two things because both of those things one is very prominent now, one is very prominent then. On February 7th of 2014, now February of 2014, shit gets stupid. Like everything hits the fan and stuff gets really, really fucking nasty for Mt. Gox. So I swear I want to say Mt. Cox. For Mt. Gox. And on February 7th of 2014, Mt. Gox halted all Bitcoin withdrawals. And they said the reason why, which was the biggest bullshit quote reason why, quote, to obtain a clear technical view of the currency's processes, which makes no fucking sense. And then on February 10th of 2014, they released a press release saying that there was basically a bug in the Bitcoin software that when a transaction was sent from one person to another, the bug would make it look like the transaction didn't go through. And then so people would resend it. And they said that they were trying to work with their core development team to try to fix that and get that issue fixed. February 17th of 2014, Mt. Gox had still all of their withdrawals that had still halted. And the CEO, Mark Karpeles, again, I'm saying that wrong, does an interview with the Wall Street Journal. And he refused to comment at that point of when they would allow customers to access their money. And everything was still, all the withdrawals were still halted. So that they halted him February 10th. February 17th, he talks to the Wall Street Journal and, gives some bullshit, song and dance. And then what ends up happening is that as of February 17th, not only can people still not access their money on that exchange, but on top of that, he still gives them no clear direction of when that might come. But he does mention that they are going to be imposing new daily and monthly limits. And so when we're talking about exchange, we're talking about settlements, you guys. So things need time to transfer. And like I said, we've seen it with Robinhood and we've seen it with Mt. Gox. And so then February, this is crazy. In February 20th of 2014, people started beginning to protest with the concern of violence in front of the Mt. Gox headquarters. And they had to pick up and move to a different location for fear of coming under violence because people were fucking pissed. So this is February 20th and they're still waiting for their money and they can't have access to it. And then February 23rd of 2014, the CEO, the Mark guy, finally resigned from the board. And then on February 24th of 2014, Mt. Gox officially suspends all trading. And hours later, it completely takes down its website and takes it offline. And it reverts to a blank page. and there was a document that was leaked internally that alleged that the company was insolvent and that they had lost somewhere around 744,408 Bitcoins due to theft that went undetected for years. So February 1st of 2014 until the end of March 2014, during the period, Mt. Gox, as the exchange, their problems with the exchange drove the Bitcoin value down by 36%. So it's very important because we're going to come back to this whole point of trust, but it's one thing to the thing is that with Bitcoin, if you know, there's the Acquired podcast touched on this, that, you know, people don't want to hack the system because the whole value, the whole perceived value, as we spoke about on the first part of the series, the whole perceived value of Bitcoin is the thing that's making it be worth at this time about $35,000 for Bitcoin. And so they don't want, you know, nobody would want to do that because then it would actually hurt their interests. But what we start seeing is that that this one exchange who had problems, whether it was on internal embezzlement, which we're going to find out here in a second, versus outternal, that one exchange took down the currency, the entire Bitcoin currency, by 36%. And so this is when you're talking about a finite amount of money, you're talking about highly specialized exchanges in such a new field. You can have, you know, one bad apple literally drive down the value of your currency that you don't have anything to do it. You might not even be trading on Mt. Gox. You feel me? So in February 28th of 2014, Mt. Gox filed for bankruptcy protection in Japan. And then on March 9th of 2014, it filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States. And the company has said that it had lost 750,000 of its customers' Bitcoin and an additional 100,000 of its own Bitcoin, totaling at the time around 7% of all Bitcoin in circulation. Okay, so we're talking about a finite amount of Bitcoin as Bitcoin is getting generated. So it's not a fiat currency. And so at this time, they lost 7% of the entire ecosphere of the Bitcoin realm, which at the time was approximately $473 million. And the filing said that it was stolen, likely stolen. Not like, we don't know for sure, but it was likely stolen. So then in March 20th of 2014, Mt. Gox reported on its website that it had found 199,999 Bitcoins worth about $116 million in, this is important, in an old digital wallet used prior to June of 2011. So then technically that brought the amount down to only approximately, you know, 650,000 from the 850,000 that they had originally thought they lost. But this is where it gets interesting. So what happened is in April of 2015, the Tokyo security company WizSec concluded that most or all the missing Bitcoin was straight up stolen out of the Mt. Gox hot cryptocurrency wallet beginning in 2011. So the CEO, Mark Karpeles, is arrested in August 2015 by Japanese police and charged with fraud and embezzlement for manipulating the Mt. Gox computer system to increase the balance in his account. And that is where the 200,000 Bitcoin was apparently found.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I just thought that was fucking insane. Like all of a sudden, no, I just found this 200,000 laying around. Well, they were not buying it. So the Japanese prosecutors accused him of misappropriating 315 million yen or $2.6 million in Bitcoin. And it was deposited into investors' accounts with Mt. Gox. And then it was moved into accounts that the CEO controlled approximately 6 months before Mt. Gox failed in early 2014. And so that's one of the first exchanges. The second one we're not going to talk too much about, and the Acquired podcast does do a great job of really getting into the Silk Road, and I didn't want to belabor the point. I wanted to just kind of round everything up as fast as possible. So the Silk Road was another exchange. It was also launched in 2011, and it was used specifically as part of the dark web for illegal sales. There was a lot of drug sales going back and forth. There was a lot of anonymity.
Anonymity.
And
Yeah, that works.
thank you, my British, damn it,
Yeah,
Anonymity.
anonymity.
Anonymity. Thank you. And so basically when it first launched, what happened is that new sellers had to purchase the accounts in an auction, and then finally they ended up making it a fixed fee, and that they just charge for new sellers. And in October of 2013, because there was so much hideous shit, and the dark web is going to come back up here in a minute, because there was so much hideous shit that was going on with all of this anonymity. There you go. Did I say it right?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost.
Okay, yeah, that was going on. Basically, the FBI came in and they shut down the website, and they arrested Ross Ulbricht, who was also known as the Dread Pirate Roberts, which pisses me off because I love Princess Bride. And he ended up getting life in prison without possibility of parole. This was a young fucking guy. I think he was like in his early 20s. So then in November 2013, so October, the FBI comes in, shuts down the Silk Road, and basically takes the guy that created it, and he's thrown in jail. Possibility none for life with no possibility of parole. So then November 2013, literally the next month, Silk Road 2.0 boots up, and with a new founder, and that founder was arrested in November of 2014, a year later, also by the FBI, and he also got life in prison with no parole. So, and then in November of 2020, the United States government seized more than 1 billion worth of Bitcoin connected to the Silk Road. And what I find so fascinating about that is that when they seized more than $1 billion worth of Bitcoin connected to Silk Road, are they keeping that in Bitcoin, or are they converting that to US dollars?
I'd keep it in Bitcoin.
Well, you would keep it in Bitcoin, but the thing is that if the whole point of the US government is to maintain the fiat currency, then wouldn't it seem anti-productive for you not to take the Bitcoin and basically take it out of the pool and convert it over to dollars? But from a business standpoint, if you have one Bitcoin at this time, like I said, is about what is Bitcoin at right now, Stormy? Because so I don't
37,000.
37. Okay, so seeing my number was off. So 37,000. It would behoove you to keep that amount of money and not do the conversion. But I think that that's very interesting. And so now we're going to talk just a little bit about some theft that has been occurring through the exchanges or through hacking. So in January of 2018, this was one of the biggest ones you guys might have heard of. CoinCheck got hit with a heist of to the equivalent of $530 million in cryptocurrency. And they apparently decided to partially refund 260,000 of the missing cryptocurrencies for all the people who were affected by the theft. And it was not in Bitcoin, but it was in another cryptocurrency, NEM, and it's a Japanese cryptocurrency. And in June of 2019, cryptocurrencies, so this was Bitcoin and others, worth about $1.1 billion had already been stolen. And it was stolen using malware programs purchased on the dark web. And so when we talk about the Silk Road getting its start in the dark web, and then now we're seeing here it's June of 2019 as of the time of this reading, and we have people still using the dark web to sell malware programs that are used to hack in and steal the currency. And so they at the time of June of 2019, they had about 12,000 markets and 34,000 programs designed to hack into the cryptocurrency. And the average price of the software for June of 2019 was $224. And so the deal is that the people where they think this is coming from is that globally, this is 2019, y'all, this is pre-COVID, right? So globally, you have a whole bunch of people who are being trained as coders that are out of work. And so they're trying to pay their bills. And so they create software to hack into cryptocurrencies, and they sell them on the dark web globally. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they're getting paid here in a minute. Now, if we're looking at 2020, how much fucking worse is it now? because in the United States, a lot of us have the ability that we can work from home with good technology and et cetera, et cetera. But if you're in maybe a poorer country, well, I guess if you're in a poorer country and you have a computer, then you're probably a little better than the lowest class in there. But now you found yourself potentially out of work. You still have the skill set to code. You just don't have a job to code. And so it would seem that by just conclusion that people would be more apt to be writing more of these programs. And so when they write these programs to hack into cryptocurrency, 27% of the hacks are to the cryptocurrency exchanges, and then the other is another big target of this is business accounts for about 21%, but they are actually targeting internal systems and holding them ransom, but then demanding they get paid in cryptocurrency. And so one of the big cryptocurrencies, because there's like every fucking cryptocurrency is popping up over there around everywhere. And one of the most elusive and anonymous cryptocurrency is Monero, and that seems to be one of the biggest cryptocurrencies of hackers that they like, because there is a huge amount of anonymousness. Look at that, I'm just avoiding it. And like the blockchain, it doesn't actually record any addresses between the sender and the receipt, and it actually creates a one-time address, and that it is not recorded, and it is not linked to either one of the parties. So it literally is just kind of doing this shit on the fly. Like literally everything's like, it's like a burner email, a burner trace on it. And I go back to, I keep going back to the example of the 13 colonies. If you have, the world reserve currency right now is the United States dollar. And the thing is that if you have, all these states all these different countries with all of these different currencies going on, and then you add a whole bunch of other cryptocurrencies in the mix that you can't really pin them to anything except specifically only perceived value. And as I see more and more just different cryptocurrencies that, do whatever the fuck they do. And if the cryptocurrency market is pushed mainly by the technology, as new technology comes out, then we would expect that as long as cryptocurrency is around, that we're going to continue to see different branches of cryptocurrency. It just blows my fucking mind, because I don't know. I don't know how. Until people can go in, and I understand that, there was some stores and there was some websites that were taking cryptocurrency, but I mean, I don't know. We're just having multiple cryptocurrencies out there, literally based on absolutely nothing, convoluted with moving into other currencies. It's just, the whole thing seems like a crazy shit show to me. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit about how the cryptocurrency market is starting to come into a little bit of, not recognition, but bigger guys are starting to get on board with it, that I don't know if is necessarily good or bad. And I have concerns about that I'll share next week. And so far, as I journey through cryptocurrency, while I find that I have a better understanding of cryptocurrency, I find that I like it less. That being said, there's a lot of people that made a fuck ton of money on cryptocurrency. So, I really wanted to change my mind on cryptocurrency. And so far, I just haven't found anything that's been concrete enough. It's the situation with GameStop, right? So everybody pushed it up. It was a inflated value, and there was people that piled into it, and a lot of people lost their ass. If we have it down to whatever I just said it was, 50 whatever dollars, you would assume that since there's no fundamental ground for that it's going to go back down to its valuation, and that would be $20 to $30.
Hey, listen to this. I just want to go back to your Monero.
Yeah.
Because I started researching it as you were talking about it. So this, it looks like a cipher trace with the assistance of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, created a way to track Monero.
Oh.
But it's still about $150 a coin. But that just tells you, hey, I'm going to do all this illegal shit with this stuff that's going to give me anonymity. And you may not have anonymity forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy stuff, but this is what I can't like. I mean, again, I get it. Bitcoin is going up and, it has bubbles, but the bubbles don't take it all the way back down to zero, like where we see with GameStop. Presumably at the time of this recording that it's going to go back to its normal valuation, and then the actual push on GameStop is going to be over, unless, of course, we have more people shorted again, and then we have this like hot potato effect. But the thing is that what is so crazy is the fact that, Bitcoin being the most successful, I keep going back to it is built on nothing. There's nothing there. So, I mean, at least with GameStop, it was a manufactured bubble, but at least it does have assets as a company. It does have a business model. It does have retail locations. I mean, there's a balance sheet there. There's, financials, there's fundamentals you can dig your teeth into. But literally Bitcoin, just somebody decided to just, boop, you know, and it just, I don't know. I have, I guess, because I research so much stuff to try to figure out where we think everything's going to go and what's going to be best for the client, to just be like, oh yeah, something that literally is based on nothing. Yeah, totally buy that. And again, like I said, lots of people have made millions of dollars off Bitcoin, so good on you. That's my own bias, but so we'll be rounding this series out next week. And is there anything you guys want to add or any questions you got for me?
I spoke to my dad about it, and he says it's dodgy. So that's my dad's advice for you. Okay.
There it is.
I listened to my dad.
Zoe's dad.
Yep. I haven't asked Grandma yet. I haven't asked Mad Nan what she thinks, but my dad says dodgy. So there you go. I'm sticking with him.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's so crazy. It's a dodgy, but I mean, if you bought it when it was worth nothing and you can sell it at $37,000 right now, I mean, or presumably if it goes higher in the future, it's kind of like, even though the fact that it's based on nothing doesn't really matter when rubber hits the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where like my financial brain just like it's like getting pulled apart by it in general. So anyway, next week we'll be finishing out our Bitcoin series. Follow us on Finances the Other F Word. We forgot to do all of this shit last week. Follow us on Finances the Other F Word. Follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. You can pick up Finances the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, our book on Amazon, Walmart, Target, and Barnes and Noble. And Stormy's book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System, is also on Amazon. And feel free to give us feedback, and you can call our Google number, which I still don't have memorized. My apologies. You can call our Google number at 775-537-4352. And we might play you on the air. If you have questions in general, if you have questions or any ideas about any of the further series we should do. And with that, we're out this bitch.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review us and tell your friends.